Well, I was just the normal college student, athlete. I went to Newcastle High School, played basketball there, and then ended up going to Hope College in Holland, Michigan, and to play basketball there and to get my education there. Got there freshman year, had an absolute blast, loved basketball, and that's when I started to see kind of my body taking its toll with the whole athletics. Made amazing friends, great group of guys that have the same values and beliefs as I do, and it was just overall great. Decided not to play basketball this coming year, but was still athletics is still a part of my life. Being able to play, pick up games, and then making sure I stay in shape. And so doing workouts every day, going to school, hanging out with my friends, until this happened in October. And that's when I heard the loud pop in my back, and to be honest with you, my life changed for the better, to be honest with you. And like I said, it was a normal life before that, and then all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, it just changed. I was a Christian before. I actually thought I was doing the right things. I was leading some Bible studies, going to church. My dad was a pastor. I was leading people to Christ. But I deceived myself into thinking that I was really living my life right for Christ. But I quickly realized that, I was to a degree, but not to the level that God wants me to. And so my immature faith and my walk with Him just needed to grow. I needed to surrender everything, my entire life. People pleasing. I was a huge people pleaser. And honestly, God has blessed me with that, being able to communicate with people easily, just enjoying others' company. But I let that hinder me, and that brought compromise. I put myself in compromising situations. Another one would be comfort. I was turning to worldly things, friendships, my girlfriend. And, when those were taken away, my friends went back to school, my girlfriend broke up with me, I started asking myself, who am I? And another issue is pornography. That had a stronghold in my high school days, and that was something God wanted to close the door once and for all in that aspect. And so I had to lay it all on the line and find my identity in Christ. I was in my health dynamics class at school. That was a class I was taking, and it was basically a PE class for college. And we were doing like an insanity workout, and we went up to do a burpee. And there was a loud pop in my back, and my back pain began getting worse, which I have had since I was 14 years old. And the red flag really was when it was becoming hard to walk. I started having trouble walking, and that's where I was like, okay, this is a little more serious than what I had made it out to be. And so it continued to get worse throughout the day, and that night I actually went to the ER room, and they didn't do much for me. They just put me on heavy pain medications and sent me back to my room. Don't really remember much, but by the end of that next day, I was paralyzed from the waist down. No movement, no feeling, and that's when I called my dad to have him come get me. And so he drove 5 hours to come get me, and we went to, that evening, we went to St. Vincent's in Carmel. I was admitted there, didn't really do much. Went to St. Vincent's, their main campus in downtown Indianapolis, and that's where they did the testing and the procedures, and ended up not figuring anything out. And so we were like, we're going to send you to another hospital. It's a research hospital downtown here in downtown Indianapolis, and we're going to pray that that we can figure something out there. So they sent me to IU Methodist, the research hospital there in Indiana, and same thing, ran test after test, procedure after procedure, and found nothing. And so our last hope was to go to a hospital in Chicago called RIC. And so that's kind of where we went from there after I was released from IU Methodist. Obviously did a lot of praying and talking with God through all of this. And as I was doing that one day, God showed me something from my past before my dad became a pastor. We went to my uncle's church. And there was this old man, his name was Tillman. And Tillman brought a new cane every single Sunday to church, and I was always allowed to play with them. I thought it was the coolest thing. Well, one of those times he cut one of his canes in half and gave it to me. And so, as I was praying, God was, bringing this back to me, and Tillman brought me a cane, kind of like what he did at church back then, but instead of the 3 years old, this was this 20-year-old Joel. And so after that, I had a dream. Right after that, it was the J23 dream. And, like I said earlier, I played basketball at Newcastle, and before we ran out of the tunnel, as we ran out of the tunnel, we busted through the paper, the banner that those athletes run through. And instead of, the different drawings on it that the art teacher draws, mine said J23, kind of like a calendar that you peel off for each individual day. And so I didn't really understand it, and so I turned to the Word, and my dad, came alongside with me, and we looked into the Bible and looked at the books that began with a J, and looked into the 23rd chapter and started reading those, and we were getting nothing, absolutely nothing. And, I started praying. I was like, God, show me something, bring this together, let this make sense to me. And literally that next Sunday is when a little boy at my church, 4 years old, came up to me and told me I was going to walk on a Thursday. And that's when I knew I was going to get my legs back. As soon as, that little 4-year-old boy came up to me, I put the pieces together to understand that a Thursday, J23, maybe that had something to do with the months. And so I turned to a calendar to look to see if, January, June, July 23rd fell on a Thursday. And so I immediately turned to June and July, because I was like, well, it's not going to happen in January. That's like next week. That's way too soon. And so, I look there, and I can tell you right now, one fell on a Wednesday and one fell on a Monday. And I'm like, okay, this is dumb. Like, is it really going to happen on January? And so I end up looking back there, and lo and behold, there it is, January 23rd, falling on a Thursday. And so I was just like, I grasped a hold of that with everything inside of me. My heart, my full faith, like everything I put into that, because I knew God was going to bring my legs back on January 23rd, that Thursday. Well, that day before, we were fasting and just praying, seeking, God through all of this, making sure that, this is really going to happen, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, just a lot of prayer, seeking God through all of this. And, that night came around, and I wasn't tired, to say the least. I was like, if this is going to happen, I want to be awake for it. And so I didn't sleep at all, and that morning, Thursday morning at 3 o'clock, that's when I started feeling the numbness and tingling in my toes, which I was like, yes, this is it. But as it, started going up my legs to reach my hips, that's when it started becoming extremely painful. But to be honest with you, I've never been so satisfied with pain in my entire life. And so it took an hour and a half for it to reach my hips, and it took about another 20 minutes for the pain just to kind of die down. And that's when I pinched myself and I wiggled my toes, like, hey, this is the real deal. And so I was like, I'm gonna walk, and so I swung my legs out of bed, and I walked for the first time in 3 months. And it was amazing, because I was walking normally. I was not having any trouble. I was a little weak, but, which was the fact that I'm walking and being able to support myself is an absolute miracle, because the doctors were explaining after 3 months of being paralyzed from the waist down, I would have to learn how to walk again. I would have to retrain those muscles to walk. And the vigorous physical therapy that it would take to get me back to where I would need to, support myself was, going to be like 12 weeks or something like they said. And so, walking, into the kitchen, I will be honest with you, I fixed coffee, started fixing the coffee first, turned on the light, and I walked into my parents' room, and they saw my silhouette, and, they're like, Abe, because my younger brother's name is Abe, and they're like, what are you doing up? And I'm like, no, it's Joel. And, you just heard the covers just fly off, and, them sprint to me and just embrace me, and just the tears of joy and the emotion, like, we were just so happy that I was walking again. And just, I can't even begin to describe, the joy that was there that night. So.
The Monday before Joel got his legs back, I had a dream that night. And to give a little context of the dream, We had been to Chicago to the RIC hospital the week before, and we were waiting for them to call us back to let us know if they were going to accept Joel in the inpatient care up there at that hospital, because they were going through our insurance company to find out if our insurance was going to pay for inpatient, because Joel had been to 4 hospitals and we'd not received any really answers as to why he was paralyzed. So we were right in the middle of this, waiting on RIC to call us to let us know. So on that Monday night, I had this dream, and in the dream, I am on the telephone talking to a lady from RIC. And in the dream, she tells me that Joel has been accepted into the RIC inpatient care. And so I was real excited, but as soon as she said he had been accepted in the care, in the dream, Joel walks out of his bedroom and he starts to walk towards me, and I'm just like, ma'am, I'm going to have to call you back. My son's walking. And she goes, what? I said, my son's walking. He's right in front of me. He's walking. And she doesn't answer me. I said, ma'am, I'm going to have to call you back. I don't know that we're going to need your services. And so I get off the phone from her, and in the dream, I embrace Joel, and I just start crying, and we just hug each other. And so that dream was really, really important to me on that Monday, because not only were we waiting on RIC to call us, but it gave me a time frame to go by in my faith, to realize that God was speaking, that Joel was going to get his legs back that week, which went along with Joel's J23, January 23rd. So it really, really increased my faith as his dad to believe that God was going to give his legs back to him on January 23rd. And what's really exciting about the whole thing is Joel did get his legs back on January 23rd. But what was more exciting is RIC called me on Thursday, January 23rd, on the very day that Joel got his legs back. And I was able to tell them, I don't know if we're going to need your services.
You know, this was an attack from the enemy, because the enemy hates me and what he was using to, harm and destroy me, God was using for good. He was wanting to remove some junk out of my life. He was wanting to pour into me and instill some things in me. And, the junk that he wanted to get out is people pleasing. I'm a big people person. I love being around people. I love making people laugh and just, enjoying people. And honestly, God has blessed me with that. But I let it hinder me, and I put myself in compromising situations, which, opened up the doors to a lot of other junk. And one thing would be comfort. God wanted to remove the comfort that I have, put into worldly things. I put my comfort in my friendships. I put my comfort in my girlfriend. And so, when my friends went back to school, my girlfriend broke up with me, I had nothing. I had put my identity in these things. And I quickly, I started asking myself, who am I? And another thing I, said really quick was my identity. I was finding my identity in these worldly things. And another thing would be pornography. Pornography had a stronghold in my youth, and God wanted to close that door once and for all. So what I used to turn to, I wanted to turn to again, and God was like, no, turn to me. God was really wanting to show me that my identity really comes from Christ. And, I said, I started asking the question, who am I? Was I really living my life right for Christ? And no, I was not. I was not, because I was finding my identity in these worldly things. And I had to realize that I am a son of God who he loves so deeply, and nothing can fill that hole in my heart that I put these worldly things, into instead of God. He also, was telling me, you need to overcome your immature faith and lay everything on the line. He was wanting everything from me. And so to lay down my life, to pick up my cross and serve him every single day, taking everything up with him, even to the little things of what I'm going to eat. Lord, I'm taking it all to you. And that's what he really wanted to get to me, was, Joel, lay it down on the line for me. Let me be the driver of your life. how absolutely amazing he is. And he still works in miraculous ways. He is still a miracle performing God. Here is a perfect example, and we've had some people in our community that have had absolutely amazing miracles, and he is just amazing. The love and the compassion that he has for us is never ending. And another thing I just really encourage everybody is to let God do what he wants to do inside of you. Lay your life on the line for Christ. Give it all up, because without him, we are nothing. And so, again, giving him the driver's seat, letting him steer where he wants to steer, surrendering it all. And I know it is extremely hard. It took me forever to finally let God just, do that inside of me. But I want to reiterate that I am not done, getting worked on. I am an onion. That first layer has been peeled back, and God is still, peeling more layers off. And it's a never-ending process, and it's just one of those things that it's a daily thing. We have to pick up our cross daily. And to be honest with you, I hate it, but I love it at the same time, because I know what God's doing is maturing me into the man that I'm supposed to be.